So I'm at the Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside, Chicago. This cemetery is absolutely beautiful and big. It's a stunning day today, it really is. It's a shame that I'm here to talk about something rather tragic. So I'm here to visit a memorial and some graves in relation to Our Lady of the Angels school fire, which happened in 1958. So this area here is Our Lady of the Angels Memorial with some of the victims that are buried here. I'm going to be showing or visiting as many of the graves that I can, and I will show them whilst I'm telling the story. But I thought I'd show you the memorial and then show you the graves after. So there's also apparently a memorial at the site of the school. The school was demolished and rebuilt nearby. That school closed in 1999. But the disaster led to major reforms and improvements in school design standards and fire safety. Let's go and have a look at the memorial. So basically, Our Lady of the Angels School was an elementary and middle school, so the kids would be kindergarten to 8th grade. On Monday the 1st of December 1958, it was shortly before classes were to be dismissed that day, that fire broke out in the basement near the foot of a stairway. So smoke, heat, fire and toxic gases cut off escape routes. Many more were injured jumping from second floor windows. Because of a raised basement, the height would have been more like a third floor level. The fire was primarily confined to the second floor of the north wing, and the north wing was part of a two-storey structure built in 1910. It was originally a church but became a school in 1939. A south wing dating from 1939 was added and then connected to the north in 1951 by an annex. So the two original buildings and the annex formed a U-shape. At the time, due to a grandfather clause, there was no cause to require schools to retrofit to a new fire standard if they met previous regulations. Therefore, the modernisation didn't require them to conform to any new fire standards. They legally complied with the fire standards of that time and at that time. So a grandfather clause is a clause exempting certain pre-existing classes of people or things from the requirements of a piece of legislation. Several fire hazards existed. There were glass transforms or transoms at the top of the classrooms, great for ventilation but would not stop flames and smoke when the heat broke the glass. There was only one fire escape, no automatic fire alarm, no alarm connection to the fire brigade. The stairwells were not fire resistant, no heavy duty fire doors to the second floor corridor. The interior was made entirely of combustible wood and material. Flammable varnish and petroleum-based waxes were used to keep everything looking good. There were only two fire alarm switches in the whole school. One was in the north building and one in the south. Oh, there were 4 fire extinguishers in the north wing, each mounted 7 feet. Yes, 7 feet off the floor. Therefore, out of reach for most of the adults and all of the children. It was a recipe for disaster, really, wasn't it? So the single fire escape was near one end of the north wing. To reach it, you would need to pass through the main corridor. And in those days, there were no limits to the number of students in each class. And in this school, numbers for each classroom reached as high as 64 students. That's a lot, isn't it, in one classroom? So as I've said, the fire started in the basement of the north wing at around 2 p.m. It smouldered undetected for about 20 minutes, gradually heating the stairwell and filling the area with smoke. It began superheating air and gases into an open pipe chase that made a conduit up to the cock loft above the second floor classrooms. At approximately 2:25, three 8th grade girls noticed the smoke, they notified teacher, Sister Mary Helene O'Neill. She lined up the kids in the classroom ready to evacuate, but on opening the door, the classroom was met with thick smoke and deemed it too dangerous to leave via that route. She decided to sit tight and wait for rescue. About this time, windows started shattering, giving oxygen to the fire. The wooden staircase burst into flames, sending hot gases, fire and thick black smoke up the stairwell. The caretaker went to the rectory to ask the housekeeper to call the fire brigade, after which he ran back to the school to assist evacuation via the fire escape. One of the teachers pulled the fire alarm. The fire alarm did not ring. That teacher left the school with some of her students, and after a few minutes went back to pull the alarm again. It worked the second time and rang the alarm inside the school. By this time, unfortunately, the teachers and students in the north wing classrooms on the second floor were trapped. So remember I said that the caretaker had asked the housekeeper to call the fire brigade? Well, he asked for that to happen at around 2:30 p.m. The telephone call did not reach the fire brigade until around 2:42 p.m. Vital minutes lost. The first floor had a heavy fire door, so effectively blocked fire and heat. The second floor had no fire door. The substandard corridor doors on the second floor had glass panes propped open. 2 other doors were chained open. They should have been closed, of course. One was closed at the discovery of the fire. The other remained open. Well, you can imagine, can't you? Fire, heat and smoke on the second floor was below them, and above them there was no safe escape for 329 children and five teachers on that second floor. One nun in room 209 ordered her children to place books and furniture in front of that classroom's doors. Doing this helped to slow the smoke and flames until rescue came. Out of the 55 students in that room, 8 escaped with injuries, and 2 died after the roof collapsed, having passed out through smoke inhalation. Unfortunately, another died 3 months later through burns she had sustained. The fire department arrived within 4 minutes of being called, but of course the fire had probably been burning for around 40 minutes at that time. They also needed to summon additional firefighting equipment when they realised the severity of the fire. A locked gate on one side of the building meant that the fire brigade could not get ladders to the kids at the south windows straight away. They needed to break the lock first, causing more delay. Many kids succumbing to smoke inhalation were stumbling, crawling, literally fighting their way to the windows. Many jumped or fell or were pushed out of the windows before ladders could reach them. Kids were jumping with their clothing or hair on fire. Many died later because of the fall, many more seriously injured. Some of the smaller kids who reached the window were too small to climb over the high window sills or were pulled back by others trying to get out. The heat became more intense and at around 2:55 p.m. a flashover occurred in the hallway and several of the classrooms. Firefighters were struggling to pull students and teachers out, and the screaming of the kids at the time of the flashover was awful. That's how it's been described. Just after the flashover, a portion of the roof collapsed over rooms 208 and 210, killing several other students and children. It was a desperate effort from teachers, fire brigade and passers-by to save as many students as possible. Many were led to safety. Room 212, located at the opposite end of the hallway from the source of the fire, lost half of the 55 students through smoke inhalation, but the rest was saved when the fire brigade managed to start getting water into the building. The water lowered the temperature in the room enough to stop the rest being asphyxiated. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the fire brigade initially went to the wrong address. The cause of the fire was never determined. A 10-year-old student at the school confessed in 1962 to setting the fire. A family court judge later concluded the evidence was insufficient to substantiate the confession. The 1959 report blamed the civic authorities and the Archdiocese of Chicago for housing their children in fire traps. The report noted that the Chicago School Board and the Archdiocese continue to allow some schools to be legally operated despite having inadequate fire safety standards. So due to the grandfather clause, the school was not legally bound to comply with all 1958 fire safety codes. The 3 nuns who died were buried side by side at Mount Carmel Cemetery. 38 burials took place at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside. Many other young students were buried in the Shrine of the Holy Innocents plot at Queen of Heaven Cemetery. A monument there lists the names of all 95 victims. Others were buried at St Joseph Cemetery, St Nicholas Cemetery and Norway Cemetery in Michigan.